Well, thank you. You see our tagline, we launch big ideas, and I believe we're getting ready to launch one of our biggest ideas, if not the biggest, but I'm going to let Mo share that with you. First, though, I have a confession. I was already nervous coming up here because I knew we were going to have to compete with Mindshare with 10 other startups, and then I got even more nervous when I thought I was going to have to follow Eric, and there's no way to compete with that. So thank you, Stuart. You relieved a lot of anxiety. But over 25 years in the financial services business, I've learned a few strategies on how to capture attention. One is the Craig Sager strategy. Anyone remember his sports commentary? Probably not. You remember his jackets, right? More than anything. So the good news is there's no shortage of ugly jackets in the world, especially if you go to estate sales and garage sales and get grandma and grandpa's sofa and reupholster it into jackets like this. So I've employed this pretty successfully on financial media when I do dumb things, like in January suggest that NVIDIA is a good short. And then it goes on to be the best performing stock in 2023. Viewers aren't left going, that guy's really dumb. No, he just wears ugly jackets. So if nothing less, you're going to go, who's that guy that wore the ugly jacket, and talked about this public venture thing. The other strategy that I know has worked and employed is to put a picture in your mind that you can't unsee. Now, I promise it's not going to be grotesque and something that you're going to be mad at me for showing you, but this is a representation of me right out of business school on Wall Street when I was first asked by a superior, what's the value of the patents of this company? And that's me. I had no clue why. I was told in business school that intangible assets like patents are intangible. They have no value. And the reality is, tying it back to ideas and us launching big ideas, we like to launch big, good ideas that have patents. So if any of you have been in the patent space, there's a lot of patents that are worthless and bad ideas. These are two that are actually granted patents. The one on the left, apparently there was a run on pranksters pulling fire alarms in the 30s. And some genius decided, you know what, let's stop this. Let's put a mousetrap on the fire alarm so that when someone pulls the fire alarm, we're going to trap them there, and then we won't, well, guess what? No one's pulling the fire alarm. The other one, man's best friend, I love, how many people have dogs? How many people love when they shed? Yeah, before hypoallergenic dogs, they had a sack for the dog to ride on the side of the car. So these were patented bad ideas. So what I want to share with you are nothing but good ideas. Before I do that, Matt said we just went public. So then I get to share this wonderful disclosure. There's risks and uncertainties with investing in public companies. Please read that at the SEC. Forget Ambien or an edible. You can do that and it'll cure your insomnia if you want to go to sleep tonight. So what do we really do? We're about taking ideas and turning them into investable assets. We've been at this for over 2 decades right now. This is a sampling of our most recent successes. The one on the left is Prevention Bio. It's a biotech company that had a portfolio of drugs, one that was most particularly interesting to us that delayed and potentially prevented the onset of type 1 diabetes, so juvenile diabetes. We originally financed it and co-founded it in 2016 at $2.50 a share in a private placement, and then within 18 months we took it public, which is unique to our model, at $4 per share, and then it was acquired this year by Sanofi for $2.9 billion or $25 a share. So that is a representation of the economic value opportunity that we believe exists in the public venture space by investing in ideas that are traditionally said you can't go public until you have revenue and customers. We flip that paradigm on its head and say, look, we can go public early. We've done it, and we're having success. So these other two companies are in different spaces. Q Biopharma is a technology we co-founded out of the Albert Einstein School of Medicine that has applicability in, it's a trifecta, so in immunotherapies, in infectious disease, autoimmune disease, as well as oncology. And then Pulse Biosciences is an interesting case study in us finding technology because we have one of only 4 globally translated patent databases that was in 2 universities, so Old Dominion and then USC. We found that technology was very unique, and we struck deals with tech transfer with both, merged them together because they would have not been successful without it. And it's about applying nanopulsed electricity in various applications in the health market, from dermatology into cancer treatment. So those are some ideas that are much better than a sack that goes on the side of the car or a fire alarm with a prank. But really, we lead what we believe and call this category called public venture. We're newly public, but we're not new at this. It's hard to read this slide, but I'll just tell you, we've been at this for 27 years now. One of the different things about us too is that we've never had a fund. So Matt mentioned it. This is about a community of investors that believes in the purpose of having an impact with technologies on society. So we're not looking for the latest hype, we're looking for the next impactful technology. And we want community members that can add value, not just their capital, but their intellectual capital. So for instance, if we were looking at an AI technology, I would love Keith from NVIDIA to provide the diligence to assist us and increase the probability of success in finding those opportunities. Or to put it another way, Yogi Berra once said that there should be no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. So we don't want the professors, we want the practitioners. And some of you are probably in areas of expertise where we have a gap in our diligence process. So we'd love for you to consider finding out more about us so that you can be not only just contribute capital, but your intellectual capital. So really, public venture, we've only got a few minutes. We can talk more about this, but it's traditionally been referred to as microcap. We do, like I said, take our companies public early by all standards. We believe there's a lot of benefits to this. There's more transparency, there's liquidity for investors, there's a lower cost of capital if we finance from milestone to milestone. So a lot of benefits that we can talk about, a lot of opportunity too. About $80 to $100 billion worth of financing is done in this area of the market each year. The other question comes, how do we pick winners? You can't really see that. That's a guy going up to dunk and his nose is getting picked by the defense. So we have a criteria, right? We have a discipline, a process. It's 6 key things that we look for in potential investments. You look on the bottom right, the most important thing for us is we're very IP centric. You have to have, if you don't own the IP, you can't sell the product or the service or the technology. So we begin everything with a lens of diligence first on the IP. We're atypical in that sense. Most investment bankers say, hey, we can raise you money and try and backfill the diligence. We start with the diligence. Sometimes it takes us 4, 5, 6 months. And once we get to the point of conviction, then we say, okay, this is something we're going to finance. So with that being said, we have a process. Again, I don't want to bore you with the details. We do look at over 10,000 ideas per year that we put through this lens of IP, and then we determine what are the best ways to invest in the ones that pass through those screens. And it's a unique structure that's not, I don't know that there's anyone in existence on the public markets right now. So we're set up as a pass-through LLC. And really our thinking is not to become the biggest asset manager in public venture. Rather, we want to focus on quality over quantity, and when we have big wins, pass through to shareholders. So we're not looking to amass a 10, 20, $30 billion portfolio that we have to then deploy again. We actually want to take the same pool, original pool of capital, reinvest it, and pay out all the excess to our shareholders. So we're set up for that. Unique tax advantages for anyone that's interested. And then what we do, and this will tie in right at the end to Mo and Invizyne, is we spin off the companies that we incubate via exclusive rights offerings to our shareholders. So the only way to participate in our deals for big ideas is to be a shareholder of MDB. We've done this successfully in the past via rights offerings, but it's a way that we're going to move forward with the community and establishing it. Again, corporate overview, we're set up as a holding company. There's a lot of ways to derive value. The big ideas are ones that have the most leverage. And then really what we like to say is that in our model, everyone wins. We're all aligned economically. We take the majority, if not all, of our fees in equity. So we win when our investors win, when the companies win. We all win in the same way too, when the stock succeeds and has an exit like we saw with Prevention Bio. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mo to tell you about something many of you may have heard a little bit about, but it's a differentiation in a technology that he can tell you about where it came from and what's next.
So I may not be able to speak as fast as Lou. So what I'll do is I'll cut the content down here a little bit and try to make it right to the core. You've heard a lot of the disciplines that we at MDB have, and those disciplines lead to us finding ideas. And a lot of those ideas are oftentimes out of these university ecosystems, sometimes large corporate ecosystems, and sometimes inventors sitting in their garage. And what we look for is those diamonds in the rough, those interesting ideas that have a lot of headroom, can function as platform technologies, and really one of the themes that we've talked about with Ambassadors for Compassion was like have high impact, right? All of our companies have high impact, and so one of the unemphasized factors is higher elevating goals, right? So when we look at our technologies and innovations, we try to think about them. what sort of higher impact can they have, or higher elevating goal can they have on humanity, on people, on, in every which way possible. So in 2019, early or late 2018, our analysts, who are actually, we have a large group of analysts who sit across the globe, and some sit in Nicaragua, were attending a conference and came across a technology called InVisign. And InVisign can be a little bit complicated in terms of, if you understand biology and chemistry and synthetic biology and all the other stuff like that, you'll probably get it. And if you don't, a lot of it is just fly over your head. And so I'm going to try to simplify it, right? The InVisign team, it was based out of UCLA, founded by the vice chair of the biochemistry department, along with a couple of postdocs. And in about 3 or 4 decades ago, there was an initiative to say, can we start making things that we consume as humans in a environmentally sustainable, eco-friendly way, green technology, and you hear about it in reducing your carbon footprint and impact and all the other things of that sort. And the fundamental thesis there was like, can you engineer a single cell organism to start making these chemicals? And the evolutionary gold standard of that was yeast making ethanol. Anybody who drank wine last night, or maybe some beer at some point during the course of this conference, you were having the product of yeast making some ethanol in that drink. And so people said, if yeast can make ethanol, maybe it can make all sorts of other things: fuels, pharmaceutical ingredients, flavors, fragrances, and all the things that go into your perfumes, cleaning agents, and all the other stuff. But the promise of synthetic biology was to say, let's go and engineer this organism and turn it into a little mini factory, and it's just going to start pumping out like all the things that we care about. And over the decades and time that followed, that people realized, shoot, these are living, breathing, metabolic things, right? And so when we come in and we try to engineer them, they don't do what we want them to do. And we are oftentimes feeding them, by way of example, sugar, and we hope that they'll turn the sugar into the molecule we care about. 95% of that sugar goes into competing metabolic pathways and gets used by the organism for living, breathing, other things of that sort. Oftentimes the product we want them to make and we're trying to engineer them to make is toxic to that organism. And so the big aha moment that the InVisign scientific team had was like, shoot, what if we just got rid of the organism, right? The organism has lots of parts and pieces, and if we pull those out, can we take those parts and pieces and get them to make the things we care about? And they decided to try this experiment, pulled out the enzymes, which are the functional equivalent of the engine in this analogy, and then pulled out the cofactors, which are the fuel that powers the engine, and said, let's feed the engine, powered by this fuel, a bunch of sugar molecules, and can we get it to turn into like a high-value pharmaceutical ingredient? And they succeeded, right? They did it at a real small scale, and that's what caught our attention. We said, wow, this is a really innovative way of addressing humanity's needs for all sorts of things, and talk about having great environmental impact, accessing things that were previously, say, rare in trees or plants or anything else out there in the environment, and but also creating some new novel molecules and chemicals that are out there. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why is this innovative? Why is this cool? Why? Yes, you can make it this way, but so you have the environmental impact that I've already mentioned. But when you compare this to traditional synthetic chemistry, which are harsh, toxic processes, and when you compare it to some of the aspirations of synthetic biology, which is to grow these organisms, those take up a lot of resources. So this is resource light in terms of low production costs, an ability to kind of get to all sorts of things that were previously unattainable in volumes and titers and commercial efficiencies that you just didn't think was possible. And then the ability for us to design these systems to make the molecules we care about quickly is another element. And low production environments then allow you to couple it with the environmental sustainability and start thinking about all the things that we can bring to market. This slide, I won't go into it, but it basically describes the whole idea that we pull the enzymes out of cells and use the tools from cells rather than the entire cells. And we started to do these systems in a variety of applications. And so this is some of our published results. We've done them for a lot of other things as well, but we've got them in various pharmaceutical ingredients, in some of the biofuels and the flavors and fragrances, and you can see the left bar versus the right bar in each of these charts. And it shows you what the state of the art is versus what our technology at an early level can already achieve, and the performance metrics that the technology allows you to do while achieving all the other goals that I mentioned. And two of the areas that we have decided to really broadly focus on, because we said that we can make a massive impact to humanity. And if you think about biofuels and what we really call the space of energy transition, right? Energy today is largely, and so many other products and things that we make and consume and eat and use, and the fancy fabrics that are embedded in this little sweater are oftentimes derived from oil and the products that come from it and the synthetic polymers. And so we focused a little bit on this energy transition space and said, if we can get the cell to make something like isobutanol, which is otherwise toxic to a cell, and do it in our enzymatic process, we can now start getting to sustainable aviation fuel. We can start getting to sustainable polymers and chemicals and things that would supplant potentially oil as a source of all the kinds of things that we use it for today. And we're making great headroom. You can see our cost curve over here as we're kind of going down that cost curve. And as we keep going down the cost curve, we start enabling additional markets and additional opportunities and additional things. And some of these markets, if you believe McKinsey and some of the big the thinkers on this space, these are trillion-dollar kind of ecosystems. And so we're being choosy as to which billion-dollar segments we're starting to try to address. And so if you take sustainable aviation fuel, it's anticipated to be approximately a $30 billion market. And so we've gone through a process here where a number of the big thinkers who are trying to tackle big problems for humanity and for the world, and these are the Department of Energy and the National Institutes of Health and all these folks, they're putting their money where their mouth is. They like our technology, they support our technology, and they funded us to the tune of about $13 million to date, and we've got more in the works. But that's all non-dilutive capital, and that's great, but I think the bigger, most important thing is that it validates the approach, it validates the technology, and the folks who are sitting there thinking about, like, is this a way to address the future and the humanity's needs for all these different things, they're coming to the table and saying, we believe in you, we're giving you money to do it, and we're supporting you in all sorts of different applications over here. But you know, as I mentioned, we think Invizyne is our next big idea. We think it is perhaps the biggest idea we've had to date. Invizyne itself will probably have some sort of an IPO via rights offering early next year to all of our investors that are part of our community. And so we have plenty of capital in our community. It's the like-minded investors who understand how to nurture these venture capital ideas inside of a public ecosystem is what we're most after. So we invite you along for that journey, and I'll be around if anybody wants to dive into more details or enzyme engineering or anything else like that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Lou for some closing thoughts.
Before Matt gives me the gong, I'll slow down really quickly. I grew up in the Northeast. I only spent 2 summers flipping pizzas at Pizza Pete's on the peninsula, so it wasn't long enough to get into the California lifestyle. 2 ways to connect. Mo and I are going to be around. The other one is if you have portfolio companies or investments that have IP, you can go to our website, mdb.com, and you'll see in the upper right, submit a big idea company. We'll provide you with a free IP analysis. And then another one is just to reach out to us here. We'd be happy to set up a call and tell you more about what we're doing. And with that, I'm out. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt.